If you have disc issues, there are some things that nobody is telling you about your discs. But in this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast, we are sharing exactly what those are. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health Podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are talking about the discs of your spine that so many people have issues with. And if you have issues with them, there are some things that you likely have not been told about your discs. And so on this week's episode, we want to discuss with you what those are and what you can do about those things that we're going to tell you about in this episode. But we want to let you know that if what we're talking about today, if you are something that you want to take action on, if you like our guidance in taking action on it, it's exactly what we can help you with at Muscle Activation Schaumburg using muscle activation techniques. All you have to do to get on our schedule is go to www.matschaumburg.com. On our website, there's a big green button. You can click. This says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. So like I said, this week we are talking about discs of the spine. Discs are kind of these spaces between the vertebrae, and they are made up of ligaments, and they have some other structural components to them, and a lot of people tend to have issues with their discs. And when people have issues with their discs and they are seen as, something on imaging as like, hey, there's something structurally wrong with your disc, that is often where the blame goes for the pain, the symptoms, or whatever somebody may be experiencing. Unfortunately, that's oftentimes where the conversation ends around the disc. Is like, oh, see, there's something structurally wrong with your disc, so that is the reason why you're having these issues. And so because that is where the conversation often ends, there is a lot that goes unsaid about the discs. And there are two big things that often go unsaid about the discs, and that's what we want to talk with you about today.
Charlie, you highlighted it perfectly. And the big thing that we see, especially here in our office, is that there arises like a symptom, right? We don't first think, oh my gosh, my disc is having a problem. I have a herniated disc or I have a slipped disc. We often first feel a symptom, like, oh, my back feels really tight. And now it's been tight for a really long time. I should go get it checked out, right? And that's when we find out, oh, in this image that I got from my doctor, there is some sort of compromised disc. And then because we see some sort of structural compromise, we are being told that the structural compromise is the source of the symptoms that you're feeling. Because if you had a structural compromise, but you went around your day feeling great, no symptoms, no pain-free, could exercise all you want, bend over, do your gardening, play with your grandkids, all the things that you want in life, you would never go and be like, oh, well, let me just go get my spine imaged, right? You do it because there's a symptom. And so what we find that's so interesting is that once there is a picture of a compromised disc somewhere, that it then becomes that this is the main reason that you're having your symptoms. But what we do know is that most people have structurally compromised discs. Most people. I think I've read some stat that like 80% of people over the age of 30 have some sort of compromised disc. But most of these structural compromises, herniated disc, slip disc, things like that, are asymptomatic. So you got to remember those two things. Most people over the age of 30 have some sort of compromised disc. But most of those people do not have symptoms around that disc. So it has become kind of interesting being a place where we work on the muscle system, changing the muscles and saying, hey, what if we change the muscles around this structure? And we have seen people change how they're feeling, become asymptomatic, become more full of life, be able to do the things they want to do, just by knowing that, hey, I don't have to rest on this unchangeable crutch or not quickly changeable crutch of I'm going to forever have this back issue because I have a herniated disc. I can't do that ever again because I have this herniated disc. I can't golf because I have this herniated disc. We're saying, hey, what if we just change the muscle system around this area and then see how you're feeling?
Exactly. And so what's so key about this is if you understand that the majority of people over the age of 30 have a structurally compromised disc, but most of those people that have structurally compromised discs, those areas are asymptomatic, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, what's the difference then between those with symptoms and those without symptoms? Because if the compromised nature of the disc is essentially the same across the board, then why for some people is it symptomatic and why for some is it asymptomatic? You might be thinking, well, some people must have a more structurally compromised disc. But there's actually no correlation between the degree of herniation of a disc and the symptoms that are going along with it. Those things are completely unrelated. And so often we like to blame this, oh, see, like, it was a really bad herniation. That's why, I had, a lot of symptoms. It's like, okay, but a lot of people that have really bad herniations also have very little symptoms or no symptoms. Or people who have very small herniations have a lot of symptoms with it or no symptoms at all. And so there's no correlation between the amount of the severity of the herniation and the severity of the symptoms. And most people are walking around with these structurally compromised discs, whether they know it or not. So again, the big question is, well, what's the difference between the people that are symptomatic and the people that are asymptomatic? And one of the things that we see most consistently is that when the muscles are functioning better and the muscles are stronger, the likelihood of symptoms being more severe or present at all goes way, way, way down. Way, 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 way down. All right? Such that when somebody comes in, they're like, okay, well, I have a structurally compromised disc. So, okay, cool. Like, that's really good to know. We're going to still work towards getting your muscles stronger, getting your muscles functioning better. And more times than not, regardless of how severe the herniation was or severe the structurally compromised disc was, there's a noticeable change in how somebody's functioning, in how somebody is feeling throughout their day, simply by getting their muscles stronger, getting their muscles functioning better. And it's not saying that we're doing anything with the disc whatsoever. And so we want to share this idea with you because, again, a lot of times when people are offered up this diagnosis of you have a herniated disc, the solutions may not always be things that they are really interested in doing, whether it's surgery or injections or something like that. And so if you find yourself in that position of like, I'm not really interested in the solutions that are being given to me, we want to offer up the perspective that a lot of times getting your muscles stronger, getting your muscles functioning better can really help to support the areas where the discs are herniated and allow them to heal faster, allow them to heal better. It may also help to change what you are feeling from a symptom perspective.
That's right. And so an analogy that we like to use is this idea of driving down a mountain. So, okay, in an ideal situation, if you were driving down a mountain, you'd want a nice structurally sound road with some nice guardrails, right, that are hopefully preventing you from falling off the mountain if you were to lose control of your car. But then you would also have a competent driver that is actively controlling the vehicle so that you're staying on the road. You're never like, whoops, accidentally crashing into the mountain and whoops, accidentally crashing into, the guardrails. So the ideal situation is to have a nice structure of the road going down the mountain or up the mountain and a nice, competent, active driver, right? So the structure of the road is kind of like the structure of our spine and our discs, right? Ideally, it would be great if everything was structurally sound. And the active driver is like the active muscles that control your spine. The most important part of this situation is that we have an active driver. We're not regularly like smashing into the edges of, the guardrails and the mountain. We're trying to stay right on path. And so if in one area of the mountain, that guardrail was compromised, maybe, the storm came through or something, and it just wasn't there or it wasn't as strong as you might hope it would be. There's still a very competent, strong driver. They're active, they're steering the car down the road. And so the muscles in this case is going to have more influence on how the car and how your spine is moving and feeling, just like the driver in that case has so much control over how the car is navigating down the mountain. So even with a compromised structure, even with a herniated disc or a disc issue or something is wrong with your disc, we still need and want very tight, strong control over the muscles. No matter what, right? Of course, we would hope that, oh my gosh, my discs are perfect, every spinal segment is perfect, but that just doesn't happen, right? Over time, things wear out. But what we can keep putting effort into and keep stimulating in the right way is our muscle system to make sure that the muscles are handling whatever is going on in your spine the best that it can be.
That's exactly right. The better your muscles function, the stronger your muscles are, then the better control you're going to have over your spine, and the better you will be able to regulate the amount of force that's going through your discs. Okay, one of the things that really breaks discs down is when the force that's going through them is not regulated by your muscles. And so getting your muscles functioning better, getting your muscles stronger goes a huge way in terms of making sure that your discs not only stay structurally intact, but if there is anything going on with them, that it doesn't become more severe, that it doesn't become worse, and that they have an environment internally where they're able to heal better because they are being supported by your muscles. So how do we go about doing this? How do we go about making sure that your muscles can contract well, that your muscles are strong? The first step, without question, is muscle activation techniques, making sure that the muscles not only of your trunk and spine, but also of your hips, of your knees, of your feet, they are all functioning well. They can all contract the way they need to contract. So all those areas can be supported. Your spine itself doesn't need to pick up more stress because of hips that are dysfunctional or knees that are dysfunctional or feet that are dysfunctional. All the areas below it, like I said, are functioning well. The muscles themselves can do their job. And that's exactly what we are able to help you do with MAT.
Now, if you're wondering if you'd be a good candidate for MAT and you're listening to this because you feel like you have some symptoms related to a disc problem, you are definitely a good candidate for MAT. Whenever there is a joint or a disc that has associated symptoms around it, usually there is, some inflammation and some lack of function because there's inflammation or there's been so long since you've strengthened your spine or had that area really worked on functionally. So MAT is going to make sure that, hey, the muscles that are supposed to be supporting all the segments of your spine, including the one that may have some kind of hernia, some kind of disc issue, is as well supported and functional as possible. The second thing is that you're going to want to make sure that you are strength training. And especially if you feel like you have a disc issue, which means you probably have some associated symptoms, especially if you are listening to this, is that you want to make sure you are definitely following the 4 Exercise for Life principles. One of the things I hear a lot is like, oh, if you have this thing going on in your disc, make sure you're not doing this motion. If you have this thing going on in your spine, make sure you don't do that motion. And it's not necessarily a motion that you shouldn't do, but it's learning how to break down the motion so you know what range you should use. And so the 4 Exercise for Life principles, if you follow them when you do your strength training, you're going to get more of those positive strengthening, conditioning, endurance changes rather than having all of the negative side effects that a lot of people blame on exercise. Things like soreness, feeling tight after they work out, feeling borderline injured or fully injured after they exercise. So make sure you're following the 4 Exercise for Life principles when you exercise, because strengthening the muscles with exercise around any place that has a disc issue is incredibly important so that compromised structure will stay really strong.
Exactly. Like MAT will help to make sure that you're able to use the right muscles when you go and exercise. And then following the 4 Exercise for Life principles will make sure that you're doing the exercise in a way that is right for your body, making sure that you're not, abusing the structure of, your joints, your spine, anything like that by using too much motion or too much speed or moving through areas that you're not intending to. And so it'll really help to make sure that the exercise stays safe and appropriate for your body after you get your muscles turned on using muscle activation techniques. So again, if this is of interest to you, of making sure that not only the muscles of your trunk and spine and throughout the rest of your body are working well, but that your disc stays supported, your discs can become healthier, your discs don't have to take on as much stress and as much force throughout your day and throughout your life, and making sure that your muscles are helping to support them is a really big part of that. If getting to that place is of interest to you, that is what we can help you with at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. So if you're in the Chicagoland area or willing to travel to the Chicagoland area to come see us at our office here, all you have to do to see our availability and get our schedule is go to www.matschaumburg.com. Again, there's a big green button you can click that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. And once we get your muscles working well, figuring out which ones are underactive, get them all up to speed, that's when we can start progressing into more of the traditional strength training following the 4 Exercise for Life principles to help your body and system as a whole get stronger and allow you to keep doing what you're wanting to do without feeling like your discs or anywhere else in your body is compromised. So again, all you have to do to get started is go to www.matschaumburg.com. Well, thanks so much, everybody. We always appreciate your eyes, your ears, wherever you're watching or listening to us. It really means a lot that you're taking your time out of your day to do that. If you wouldn't mind, leave us a rating and review. Subscribe on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Share this with somebody that needs to hear this episode. We're wishing you all a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.